Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special installment of Museum Moments. You can see I actually have a live guest in the room with me. It's very exciting. It seems a little anti-coronavirus. We are less than 6 feet apart.
Same pod.
Same pod. We're in the same pod. This is my dad, Josh Gettinger, and I am really excited that we happen to be in the same place as I am exploring Shavuot because Torah has been pretty central to our lives and also to my dad as a scholar. He's a doctor in his day job, but his kind of scholarly life. Oh, that's not, I'm not supposed to say you're a doctor in your day job?
No, I've never considered myself a scholar.
Oh, well, I consider him a scholar. And one of the things that I grew up with was driving to Sunday school. We drove about an hour to Sunday school when I was growing up. And it would be like an hour up and an hour back of supplemental Sunday school with my dad, both ways. So today you guys are going to get that. We are talking about Shavuot, and Shavuot is one of the 3 pilgrimage holidays. They include Passover and Sukkot. And of those, it's probably the one that is the kind of most confusing, least celebrated. Even within the Torah, there's some things that are a little bit strange about it too. I mean, the Torah is so specific that Passover starts on this day and Rosh Hashanah starts on this day, and this is what you do. And it's just like, hey, 50 days after Passover, there's a thing. Let's do it. So this is all about Torah. And yay, Bobby, I'm so glad you're here with us today. And I thought there would be no better person than engaging this idea of what is Shavuot about and what is the Torah about in like a 15-minute quick break than my dad. So, Dad, what do you think this holiday is all about?
Well, like all of the 3 holidays, it has both an agricultural significance and his legendary historical significance. And the agricultural significance actually is the only one that's really mentioned in the Torah itself. There's nothing in the Torah that says that the 10 Commandments was given on Shavuot. It's just an association that we've made, maybe because it's a long-standing tradition. Also, the time frame works out about right, 3 months after Passover, but it's still. But what the Torah focuses on is the agricultural cycle, which is, of course, Passover celebrating spring and the rebirth and planting. Shavuot represents the gratitude that we feel at the first harvest and bringing an offering to Jerusalem, hoping for an even better harvest for the rest of the year. But what it's come to, now that we're not in an agrarian society, it's really come more to have this special spiritual dimension that is that we focus on, namely, this is when we stood at Sinai and received the 10 Commandments. The thing that's special for me about the Torah is that it has come to feel to me not like we don't call it scripture. In Hebrew, we call it mikra, not that which is written, scribed, but that which is called out. And like I sometimes compare it to a play. The play is not the words that are set down on paper. The play is in the performance. And I think the same thing's true of this. This is the oldest art form in which words are set to music. And the reason for that is to do what music always does for words, to bring them to life and help them to penetrate into the heart and into the mind. I'd like to give you an example of what it does for this particular moment, the moment that we stand at Sinai, because it's very, very special. The Torah is, Robert Alter in his recent translation, after his recent NPR interview about it, why he translated the Bible into English, because he's a professor of comparative literature, he points out that it has a very, very high literary quality. And I think that quality is only enhanced by adding the dimension of song. So the story up to now, before Shavuot, goes like this. We first have this very dramatic encounter between Moses and Pharaoh and the redemption of a slave people from oppression by the most powerful nation in the world at that time. And not only that, but we barely get out and we face an immense peril and have this miraculous deliverance at the Red Sea. which has become our emblem for how
Right.
even when things, worth remembering right now, even when things look really dark and hopeless, redemption can come at the last minute. And then we start to go through the wilderness and we face the mundane challenges of just getting through day-to-day things.
Also something to consider right now. The mundane challenges of day-to-day seem to be ever present.
Yeah, so we've got thirst in the desert. We've got Moses stuck, the only leader who has to resolve all the minute quarrels of his people. Finally, these little mundane things bring us to the moment where we, in the third month, we stand at Sinai. All of a sudden, we're confronted by what I like to call the mystery. You want to hear it?
I'd love to.
Okay. So it goes like this. We get to Mount Sinai. God calls Moses, prepares him, saying, prepare the people, get ready. Moses, in this particular encounter, it's very interesting because God is more aware of the peril of the moment and how dangerous it is potentially than Moses is himself. But eventually, the people are all prepared. They're encamped around the mountain. And then we hear this. And I think I'll give you I haven't pulled up a translation, so bear with me with my kind of on-the-spot translation of the Hebrew. Vayhi, and it was on the third day in the morning. Vayhi, and there were kolot uvrakim, thunder and lightning, and a heavy cloud on the mountain, and a strong call of the shofar, very, very strong. And the people in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people towards God from the camp, and they stood underneath the mountain. And Mount Sinai is entirely smoke because God came down it on fire. And then it says, I like Alter's translation, and the smoke rose up like the smoke of the kiln. The Hebrew is better even. Vaya'al ashano ke'eshin hakivshan, vayecherad kol har me'od, and the mountain trembled. Vahi kol hashofar, and it was the sound of the shofar growing stronger and stronger. Moses would speak, and God would answer him in a voice. That's the translation. Listen to it in song. Vayhi bayom hashlishi biyot haboker, Vayhi kolot uvrakim va'anan kaved al har, ve'kol shofar chazak me'od, vayecherad kol ha'am asher b'machaneh, vayotze Moshe et ha'am likrat ha'Elohim min ha'machaneh, vayityatzvu b'tachtit ha'har, V'har Sinai ashan kulo mipnei asher yarad alav Adonai ba'esh vaya'al ashano ke'esh en hakivshan vayecherad kol ha'har me'od vahi kol hashofar holech v'chazek me'od Moshe yedaber v'ha'Elohim ya'anenu b'kol. And then we hear the Ten Commandments.
So that is our preparation for Revelation.
Yes, it was a moment of wonder and awe and plain old fear. It was truly a
awe in that
fearsome moment.
That meaning. Do you think that there's something about this revelation that kind of, in that way that we reenact Passover through a Seder, is there any part of a Shavuot experience, because it's so much more kind of cerebral, like how do we internalize that kind of sense of revelation in the kind of, the central practice of Shavuot is study and learning and, going to synagogue. What do we do to take on that revelation?
And one more thing about the holiday that we do with every holiday.
We eat.
Right. So it's a holiday for material enjoyment, for pleasure, and for infusing spirituality into the material, into our mundane everyday world. For me, the important thing, so why isn't Shavuot given a specific date in the Torah? I mean, it ends up being on the same day every year. It's the 6th day of the month of Sivan. Why doesn't it tell us on the third month, on the 6th day, we're going to, I think it has to do with the fact that what we're doing here is we're connecting this particular moment with redemption. We're freed from slavery. We have this incredible obligation to some sort of cosmic force that's helped us escape from a hopeless situation. We've come through the desert, but we're left with an obligation. Freedom isn't for, I think we sometimes forget this, freedom isn't for its own sake. It's because in a way, what happens at Sinai is we're binding ourselves to yet a higher duty, which is in some ways harder than what we were doing where you didn't have to think about what you were doing in slavery. That sort of message that now that you're free, remember where you came from, remember how low you had been, and remember that you now have an obligation to make the world a good place.
That is certainly a charge for all of us. As we're celebrating Shavuot, I want to tell you we'll not have a museum moment tomorrow because we are celebrating Shavuot. And next week, we'll be back by looking at community organizing and action. I think in some ways, building on that sense of duty and responsibility, what is our responsibility to each other, to the broader world? And so that's what we're looking at next week. I will say, talking about the Torah is central to what I do in the museum. The Torah is in our belief and community section. And it's one of my favorite things is to show people what the inside of a Torah looks like and just how, talking about that process of learning to chant the Torah without vowels, without cantillation, that I've always been kind of in awe of my dad's ability to do. So thank you, Dad, for joining me. And as always, if you liked this museum moment or any of them, please feel free to drop by jewishmuseummilwaukee.org and make a donation. Thanks very much. Hag Sameach. Enjoy your cheesecake or whatever dairy products you have on the docket. Take your lactate if you need it. And we'll see you next week.
Chag Sameach.